My name is Jennith Bernstein. I am a physical therapist by background. Oh, there I am, yeah. And I am currently the clinical affairs manager for Permobile, working alongside my colleague here, Carla. Would like to say, you want to say hi?
I can say hi. Hello, everyone. My name is Carla Nooijen. I work as a senior researcher at the Research and Development Department of Permobile.
Perfect, thank you. So we'll go ahead and get started here. Does look like perhaps our slides are not advancing here as they are there, but that's okay. We'll be able to, some things that we hope that you'll be able to take away from today are that we hope you'll be able to identify specific areas where power assist devices can be beneficial to a person's overall health and well-being. We will hope that you'll be able to compare and contrast different types of power assist devices based on the clinical evidence that's going to be presented to you, and then also be able to summarize the way that the clinical evidence can influence your clinical decision making. I don't have it on this. Yeah, I'm still not seeing it on here. Sorry, guys. But we'll go with it. So both myself and Carla, as you saw just a moment ago, both are employed by Permobile. However, we're not going to be providing any device-specific names or brands during this presentation. We hope that it's going to be able to be applicable to a wide variety of solutions that you may work with. You will see images that might represent some of those products, but hopefully you'll be able to take this away no matter what products that you work with. Perfect, seeing everything now. So we'll just kind of tell you a little bit about the background and how this talk kind of came to be. First of all, we really focused on how power assist devices and power assist solutions will influence all areas of an individual's life. So most of you are probably familiar with the ICF framework, and we use that throughout what you'll see in this presentation today, which is a systematic review of the literature, client interviews, and then also surveys a survey that was conducted with individuals who use power assist devices. And we really wanted to look at all aspects of the ICF framework to expand what we know about just beyond just reducing repetitive strain injury or just reducing pain or discomfort with manual wheelchair propulsion. And in this ICF model by McDougall from 2011, they also added where quality of life really encompasses all of those aspects of the ICF framework and how they all have to work together to really produce that positive impact on someone's quality of life. So, trip down memory lane, shall we? So some of you guys may have been familiar with some of the historic research that as far back as we could locate was 2001, when we first started to see power assist technology enter into peer-reviewed literature. There probably could be devices that predate that 2001, I'm sure there are. But what we first understood about power assist solutions is the main goals were to provide a person who self-propels a manual wheelchair to provide them efficient propulsion, allow them to get where they need to go effectively, and to possibly reduce or eliminate any pain that they might be experiencing. And in that historic literature, we really saw it focusing mostly on push rim activated power assist wheelchairs. In the South, we'd say PAPAW, but I know that that's maybe not how most people would pronounce it, but power assist push rim activated wheelchairs is really what we first came to know as power assist devices. Nowadays, with technology constantly changing, the way that power assistance works upon the manual wheelchair really has changed, as well as the wide variety of types of assistance that a device can provide a person who propels a manual wheelchair. And so in the recent study by Pradhan and colleagues, they really helped to identify that there is there's, depending on the manufacturer, the region that you live in, the setting that you practice in, there's so many different names now for this technology. Praden and colleagues actually used the term rear wheel power assist device and then front wheel power assist device. And so when we were coming up with this presentation and the paper alongside of it, we tried to get a consensus among all of our clinical education colleagues and product management team to try to figure out, okay, for this information, how are we going to name these devices? We realize this might not be exactly how you would use it in your practice setting, but that's what we're going to use today. Front power assist device, or PAD, main wheel power assist device, and rear power assist device. So just a few things to consider when you're trying to match the individual with the correct power assist technology. So first thing I'd like to start with is the amount of assistance that's needed. So there's a variety of either full, partial, or what we have described as needed power assistance. So a full power assist would be one where you actually add a proportional joystick to a motor that's attached to a manual wheelchair. Our literature search did not address the full power assistance directly because we felt that that was not similar to the benefits you would experience from decreased number of pushes, because that eliminates all pushing. And so then partial assistance would be really described as when someone needs assistance for pretty much all of their propulsion, whether that's long distances, short distances, navigating, precision tasks, and then an as needed or maybe like an on-demand solution would be one where a person could manually propel their chair and then use that power assistance when in the circumstances that required it. And then on the bottom there, we know we have to consider someone's functional needs. First of all, is the device compatible with their existing wheelchair? Or are you thinking about what type of manual wheelchair they might need that would go along with their power assist device, where you're prescribing both at the same time versus trying to retrofit something? Think about what type of skills that person is going to need to be able to perform. Do they need to hop curves? Do they need to perform wheelies? Do they need to do more intricate tasks like door management, carrying items on their lap? And then what type of activities in the home are they going to need to do and in the community? What environment is someone going to be using this power assist device in? Are they really on flat indoor terrain, or are they in really thick carpet all throughout their entire home? Do they have, are they more of an outdoor terrain user where you would see flat outdoor terrain like rolling paths, rolling sidewalks, or are they expecting this device to be their all-terrain vehicle? And how do we need to set those expectations? And then transportation, or how they're going to transport the device. Are they going to load it into a vehicle themselves? Is someone else going to be assisting them? Maybe they use public transportation. Are they going to need to take this with them on an airplane where they might go outside of the country? And then maybe they're not transporting it at all. They're actually using this as part of their personalized vehicle and actually using that to mobilize themselves throughout their town or their city. And we'll hear about that from one gentleman from Belgium later on today. And then we've already addressed that that you can add a proportional joystick to some of these power assist devices, but now the variety of different ways that you can control the devices, from everything from only an attendant control to attendant plus individual. You can use dials, switches, push rims. It's no longer just that push rim activation. And then consider, is it only your person that is propelling with bilateral upper extremities, or can that power assist device be used for someone who's foot propelling? Someone who has unilateral propulsion, or what we know as hemi-propulsion, where they're using one arm and one leg. Maybe they're only using one arm. What type of device is going to match best with that individual? Just a few things to consider, no worries. So we'll go over just a few characteristics before we dive into what the literature says about all of these different devices. The first would be the front power assist device. And of course, disclaimer, these will vary by manufacturer, but typically what you're gonna see is a motorized wheel that's attached to the front of the wheelchair, typically to the footrest or to the front hangers of a rigid chair. Most of them have some type of pneumatic knobby tire, and it will elevate those front casters to help with ground clearance and navigating over obstacles. There will be some type of tiller with either kind of a motorcycle style activation or a lever style activation, or you might call that kind of a handlebar system. And then there's an integrated motor and battery. Oftentimes there will be actually a removable battery that you can kind of take inside and charge and not have to bring the entire device to your charging location. And then as we see here with Yasmin and her main wheel power assist device, we see where the motorized wheel actually takes the place of the existing rear wheel. And this is what we know as push rim activated, where there's actually an accelerometer that requires push rim input. These are typically where you'll see that proportional joystick come into play if a manufacturer offers that. There are devices that have just one motor. There are devices that have a motor in each wheel. Some have a singular battery and some have two batteries that you'd have to charge. And then this is really where you'll see most often that you have some individualization in the programming from right to left. So if you have a muscular imbalance, this might be the solution that you would select for the individual that you're working with. And then a rear power assist device attaches underneath the wheelchair, either on the camber tube or between the axles. And this is either includes a single powered caster wheel or a rear wheel with omnidirectional rollers. There's usually a singular battery and a singular motor. And then there are a variety of different control methods or input devices available. And again, varies by manufacturer. So some of the things that we wanted to start going into the literature about is some of those clinical considerations. The first slide that we showed that all of those options were both personal characteristics as well as device characteristics. And so ultimately, when you're trying to decide what device works best for someone, we know that the style and the type of device has to be really approached from a multidisciplinary team with a client-centered approach. We oftentimes think about, okay, what is the main activity you're going to use this for, but that might overlook some of the more detailed or less frequent activities where it could really end up being a barrier to someone if their device doesn't work correctly for them. Make sure that you review the benefits, but also the drawbacks of each device so that the person becomes an informed consumer of what they're selecting. Make sure that the wheelchair is compatible. Also consider the configuration. Are there any changes you have to make to the center of gravity, to the amount of rear seat to floor height, to the amount of camber, and make sure that you're not sacrificing one for the other, that you're not making a poorly configured wheelchair, but also adding a motor to it. Because then what happens when that motor is not being used or is not working for a short amount of time, then are they in a wheelchair that's no longer individually configured for them. We also know that skill training is critical to this process. So not only do people need specific skill training for power assist, but it's also really effective. Swatskia and colleagues actually showed that it helps to increase safety as well as confidence with power assist solutions. And we don't have our poll working, but hopefully you have a good idea of what some of those individual considerations are. And now I'll hand it over to Carla to start our systematic review of the literature.
Thanks, Jennith. That's what we're here for, right? Show me the evidence. So what we've done is a systematic review where we had broad search terms for power assist, add-on, propelling aid, and support, really not to miss anything there. And then we went systematically over them by reviewing the titles, the abstracts, and full text review. So we started there with 84 articles that came up in our PubMed search. And then after screening them, we were able to include 35 publications. 3 of those publications were systematic reviews, and 32 were qualitative and quantitative studies. Many of those actually combined qualitative and quantitative findings. What we also did was a survey, so we sent out a survey via social media, and there were 125 people answering, currently using a Power Assist device. Those were all adults, up to over 80 plus, and we sent it out through a global channel, so we had a global representation from US to Europe to Australia. And lastly, there were user interviews that were performed, and then those were written into clinical applications that Jennith will talk more towards after we've gone over all the evidence. So this is the overview. Don't panic now, because it's a lot. We are very well aware of that. We'll go over the boxes one by one, just to show that we have color-coded them. So green means it's a positive effect. Then we have purple for limited evidence, blue dependent on the type of Power Assist device, and black was when it was product or user characteristics. And how I will present it is that for every box that we will go over, I will start with a background, just to explain what we know about the importance of this outcome. Then we will have in blue is where the evidence is, right? The summary statements of the available research, and then we will go over some considerations as well. So starting here with body functions and structures, first up is repetitive strain and pain. So the background of this is that, as you all know, right, many wheelchair users report musculoskeletal pain, primarily in the shoulder. And people who self-propel wheelchairs are 6 times more likely to develop shoulder pain than those without mobility impairments. So what does the evidence say about using a Power Assist device? So it's clear that there is a decreased risk on pain and dysfunction, and this is supported by evidence showing that the range of motion of the upper extremity joints is more favorable when propelling with a Power Assist device compared to without. Propulsion forces are lower with Power Assist devices compared to without, and also persons experience less strain themselves, so they report less strain, self-report less strain when they're propelling with a Power Assist compared to without. So we can conclude that Power Assist devices can reduce repetitive strain and thereby decrease the risk on pain and dysfunction. Here we've added in some results from our survey where we asked those 125 individuals what the impact is of Power Assist device on pain. And then we see that 45% reports on a favorable impact on their, extremely favorable impact on their pain level, and 24% on a somewhat positive impact. So that was a nice addition to what we've also seen in the literature there. Some considerations. So when it comes to push frequency in the literature, we see different results as it depends on the type of Power Assist that was studied. So if you think about it, right, the front Power Assist device is typically without any pushes, whereas the other devices will be typically with pushes. So there's different results there, dependent on the type of device, as well as that it's dependent on the environment that you are engaging in, right? If you are using it inside or outside, and also on the health condition and your function. For foot propulsion, there is actually very little evidence, but we can speculate that the same that we see in the arms might apply to foot propulsion, but we don't know. And last but not least, cost effectiveness is a consideration, right? We see that Power Assist devices are are often prescribed when someone already has pain, and you can debate whether it can also be used as a preventative way of preventing, for example, a shoulder injury, and preventing the cost of a surgery and all that comes with being out of the relation. All right, then we move on to mental health. So we know that mental health problems are prevalent among users with different health conditions. Unfortunately, there was very few studies reporting on this, and the studies reporting on it also used different outcome measures, so we couldn't really draw conclusions to it. So we simply have to say that there's more research necessary to be able to conclude what the impact of power assist devices is on mental health. Alrighty, then we will move on to activities. We have a whole bunch of activities to discuss there. So just to start with the background again, the strain of manual wheelchair propulsion might pose limitations to activities. So restrictions in activities when someone has an injury, severe pain, arm strength impairments, low cardiorespiratory function, or the inability to maintain posture. And the evidence for power assist shows then that certain activities only are possible with power assist devices and not without. An example of this is propelling on irregular surfaces. And a second finding was that activities which require higher force might be easier and faster to perform with power assist devices compared to without. For example, going up on an incline. And the last finding was that performance of activities with more precision, advanced wheelchair skills, carrying things on the lap, and hand use are all dependent on the type of power assist device use. So we can conclude the power assist devices can enable activities requiring a higher force and make them easier and faster. With regards to energy conservation, starting with the background again, the perceived exertion during daily activities is high amongst wheelchair users compared to the able-bodied population, and the dependency on the upper body can make it more straining, but also causes less energy expenditure because of the smaller skeletal muscle mass activated, right, when you compare propelling compared to walking. And the evidence for power assist then shows that the effort with power assist devices is lower compared to without. This is shown by a lower muscle activity of the pectoralis major and anterior deltoid, a lower heart rate and oxygen consumption when propelling with power assist compared to without. And people also report on a lower perceived exertion. So they also report that it costs less energy to they perceive that it costs less energy to propel with power assist compared to without. So we can say that power assist device can be used for energy conservation. And then the question that often automatically pops up there is then what about the importance of physical activity for health, right? So worldwide, we know that around 1 in 4 do not get enough physical activity to stay healthy, and manual wheelchair users are not an exception to this. So if traveling with a power assist and thus with less energy expenditure is not compensated for by other types of activities or exercises, this might increase the risk of deconditioning and becoming overweight, although there's of course many other lifestyle factors that are in play there. On the other side, we can say that conserving energy during straining tasks might allow to maintain function while performing other necessary activities. And if a power assist means that a user can stay physically active or that a transition to a power wheelchair can be postponed, the benefits of moderate physical activity of wheelchair propulsion can remain over a longer period of time. And here it's also really nice to make the comparison to e-bikes. I'm actually not sure how popular they are in the US, but we see it a lot in Europe, and there the discussion is really the same. So if you bike with your e-bike compared to a regular bike, do you still have the same benefits for health? And then there's research there to show that Of course, the benefits are less, but the heart rate and the oxygen consumption still go up to the level that it relates to positive health effects. And what is also seen is that people actually do travel further with their e-bike compared to a regular bike, and it's more often used, for example, for commuting to work. So these are very much of similar considerations one could have around the power assist device. All right, then we went over all the activities and we continue with participation. Starting with the background again, so providing a wheelchair, we know increases participation, while a wheelchair at the same time is mentioned to be the most limiting factor of participation, and other factors limiting participation are physical impairment, the built environment in which activities take place. So what does the evidence show us then? Well, unfortunately, not so much about social and occupational participation hasn't been studied much, so there's too little evidence to draw conclusions. But multiple studies do report an increased possibility to navigate a wider range of environments with power assist. So there's a continuous positive impact on access to outdoor environments, such as on hills and in parks and off-road. And this is then also related to the earlier discussion that we had on activities requiring higher force, that we see benefit from power assist devices versus more precision, where it is dependent on the type of power assist device. Right, that higher activities requiring higher force are also typically those that are being done outside. So we can conclude that power assist devices increase the possibility to navigate a wider range of environments. In the survey, we asked typical situations in which people use their power assist device, and people could select all that applied here. And then the most common was actually outdoor activities in the community. Second one was outdoor around home, and the third one was when traveling on the airport and on hotels. So some considerations here. So compared to power wheelchairs and scooters, of course, the portability of a power assist device is better, right? Simply because it's smaller and weighs less. But taking in a power assist device in and out of the vehicle may be challenging, dependent on the weight and the dimensions of the device. And here, the wheelchair transfers, as we know that wheelchair transfers are associated with an increased risk of shoulder pain. It's also important to consider how a person is transporting the device, as Jennith was also mentioning in the beginning when you do that assessment of what kind of device someone needs. So it's not only about the repetitive strain also, but how is a person gonna transport, is it gonna do by themselves? Do they have help? And what is the best fit, really? The best type of device that fits the user's life. Alrighty, then we continue with quality of life and independence. The background to this is that the provision of wheeled mobility has been found to improve quality of life, and increasing the number of accessible environments and reducing pain might contribute to improved quality of life and independence. But unfortunately, there was only one study on quality of life, and therefore it is not possible to draw any conclusions. We did, however, see a good support of evidence for that power assist device can increase one's independence. And in our survey, we had an interesting result when it comes to the ability to socialize, where we saw actually that 44% of the participants, they answered that their power assist device did have an extremely positive effect on their ability to socialize, and 22% a somewhat positive impact. So that will be something interesting to study further. Of course, the ability to independently use the device is dependent on the combination of the user and the device, and not only on the health condition, but also on the environment and all the other life aspects. And here, this includes turning on and off, attaching, detaching, and braking, and all the considerations about the different parts of use of the device. So the last part are the environmental factors and the personal factors. We won't go over them one by one, but just to show what this includes. So environmental factors are the physical environment, dimensions of the device, durability and reliability, battery, safe wheelchair skills, and environmental friendly. And personal factors include cognitive load, experience with wheelchairs, age, body weight, and the personal preference. So if we look at this picture and we think about environmental and personal factors, we see a young girl there using a power assist device. So age is a consideration there, and she's on an accessible playground, which would then be an environmental consideration. And when it comes to age, we also seen that almost all the research is performed in adults, so we know very little about children. So if there's any researchers out there or anyone interested in deep diving in that further, we have a bunch of ideas that we would like to share. So feel free to reach out to us. So now we ticked all the boxes, so I'll hand it over back to you, Jennith, to go over the clinical applications.
Thank you so much, Carla. You can see did quite an extensive search and analysis, and hopefully that gives you all a really nice overview on how you can use some of that literature in your everyday practice and recommendations. So now I'm going to take you through a little bit about how certain individuals use power assist devices in their everyday lives, and then kind of tie it back to the themes that we saw in the literature specific to the type of power assist device that that individual used. We hope that this systematic review can be used as a resource for your professional development to help to expand your knowledge and supplement your education. You know, if we get limited exposure to wheelchair mobility and wheelchairs in school and post-professional, power assist is just one little sliver of everything that you need to know. So that's why you're here today. We went ahead and got you up to speed on the latest literature and publications, so you don't have to do that on your own. We hope that this information provided some clinical implications where you can use this to help justify user needs in your documentation, as well as your communication to prescribers. You know, there are some considerations like what Carla mentioned with the physical activity, where a medical practitioner might say, I don't want my patient to become dependent on this power assist device and not get the physical activity that they need. And you can come back to this evidence and say, yes, there are considerations there, but we know that it also allows people to go farther distances. We also know that it allows people to participate more, which can have some simultaneous health benefits. And then also, we would like for you to be able to use this when you're talking to different funding authorities. If you are from a region where right now there is no funding for power assist, not only can you provide some of these clinical applications that we'll go over, which are very valuable to show the lived experience, but then back it up with some of that clinical evidence. And then perhaps it can also be a way for you to educate some of the individuals that you work with. So if they're really stuck on what type of device is going to work best for them, you can present this information in a way that is understandable to them. You can really align the expectations that they might have for this device. You know, if they want to go 20 miles per hour, there might not be a device for them. Or if they, really want to go on, dirt bike trails, there might not be a device with them. So really for them. So really setting their expectations. And then of course, using some of this literature to create awareness for reducing secondary complications. And perhaps this is one of those moments where we have the opportunity to prevent secondary complications and long-term health challenges. So let's meet a couple of individuals. First, we'll meet Mal. He joins us from Australia. Thanks, Mal. He is quite the adventurous gentleman. He's married, he's traveled throughout the world. He has been living with spinal cord injury since 1980 at the T5 level. And so he actually has worked in a variety of CRT settings, both as an equipment provider and then also on the manufacturing side. He's also very active in his community, providing support for people who are in addiction recovery. He has quite the options for assistance and assistive devices at the ready. So he is shown here with a front power assist device. He also has a rear power assist device, and he has a passive front add-on that he has access to. So he's an outlier, right? We know that access to one device is sometimes difficult, let alone multiple devices, but that's why we wanted to highlight Mal, because he does have the experience to compare and contrast these devices. His main goals were to preserve his shoulder function and reduce any pain that he might be experiencing. He wants to feel like his options are endless. He does not want any restriction in any activity he wants to be able to do. And he travels, as we said, around the globe. So he needs something that on occasion is easy to transport. I've been told in Australia they have fire roads, essentially, which are beach access roads, and that's really important for him to be able to be mobile on some of those roads. He also would like to use this device to go into town and do his grocery shopping so that he doesn't have to expose himself to that repetitive strain of transferring in and out of his chair 4 times to go to the grocery store, loading his chair in and out twice to go to the grocery store. So every bit that he can reduce his exposure is beneficial to him. Here's just a couple of quotes from Mal where he talks about his, surprisingly, his shoulders and elbows are not as good as they once were. He can take his front power assist device to the shops, and so less loading and unloading, as I stated. And then one benefit that I would probably not have ever thought about is he never has to look for a place to park. So he can kind of get in and out quite efficiently, not fight with the crazy drivers that he might be interacting with. Then, if we think about his rear power assist device, he prefers that when he's going to travel via airplane. And he feels like that makes it just easier to pack away, simpler, much lighter. And so he goes all throughout, very rural areas. And so he finds that it's much easier to load into alternative, transportation solutions, and then also just easier to carry with him and use on the go. So what did Mal experience over the times that he's able to use power assist devices? Even though maybe we don't have the systematic literature to support mental health impact, his lived experience has shown us that he reports that using power assist in his life does have a very positive effect on his mental health and his physical health. He doesn't feel limited in what activities he can do because of any potential pain. He also feels like he's preserving his energy, and he is able to participate in whatever activities that he would like to. Some of the limitations that he reported to us during the interview was that he felt the weight of the front power assist device sometimes became a barrier. As we said, he would prefer to take his rear device on trips because it was lighter and smaller and more compact. Traction of the wheel when it's a slipper. I didn't know if you knew it could be used as a slipper, but it should say slippery. So traction of the wheel on slippery terrain. So he actually felt like the front power assist device did not have as good of traction when the terrain was wet, even though it did have a knobby pneumatic tire. He actually preferred his rear power assist device. And then related to overall quality of life, he's able to go farther, explore more, participate in new activities that we saw supported in the literature as well. He has decreased reliance on other people in his life. And then what he's saying is that it really allows you to do things while you still can and not wait until it's too late or until something gets too difficult with either chronological age or the time that he's been self-propelling. One other benefit that he really felt impacted his overall quality of life was that with his rear power assist device, he felt like he could have better control over the rate of speed that he could travel. And so when he's going for walks with his wife, if his wife wants to walk a little bit faster for a minute, he can kind of ramp that speed up. If she needs to slow down, he can slow down with her. And then also he doesn't have to use it when he's on the flat terrain, but then he can use that, what we said earlier, that as needed or that on demand when he does experience any kind of terrain requiring additional effort. And this is that beach road or fire access road that we were talking about, where he uses his front power assist device. And then a couple of ending quotes from Mal is he identified that he and the population of individuals propelling manual wheelchairs, he says that they live a lot longer than they did in the 1980s, and so he wants to continue to add, his active life years ahead of him, and he thinks that it's much better to have a power assist device earlier rather than lose that ability due to an injury and impact that quality of life. He says that using this power assist device allowed him the opportunity to explore and opened up a world of difference. I can go anywhere and get around. So how does that tie back into the evidence that was presented? So we'll focus on the front power assist device. So for body functions and structures, the front power assist device requires no propulsive forces required, right? Because we have that motorized tiller in the front. So we know that a front power assist device, it is a little bit harder to perform precision tasks, but on those nice open roads, it can be really beneficial. It's going to be harder for him to do advanced wheelchair skills, opening doors, doing wheelies. Those aren't really possible when the front power assist is attached to the wheelchair. And then also the requirement to have both hands, I think you're supposed to have both hands on the tiller at all times, could prevent you from being able to carry items on your lap, push a grocery cart, push a stroller, or perform any activity like carrying a cup, preparing a meal. You can't really use it in those type of environments. The research shows us that in terms of participation, the front power assist does have some limitations in that it increases the overall length of the wheelchair, which will change not only their turn radius, but the turn path required. So it's challenging due to weight and size, but oftentimes those are associated with higher speeds. And so that may help from a community participation standpoint if you're trying to get across a road in a quick manner, that additional speed may be a benefit. In terms of terrain requiring really high forces to navigate, the front power assist does do better than the main and the rear power assist. However, like I said earlier, it makes it harder to use in a home environment because of that turn path. And then what Mal said about when the terrain is wet, it's harder for that big front wheel to get traction. What the evidence shows us is that people report that the controls are relatively intuitive because it might be familiar to them either through video gaming or through like using grocery carts, or maybe they had a scooter before, or they have experience with motorbikes. It can be somewhat of a familiar motor skill. And then often the power on off is really accessible. They don't have to really reach behind them, in front of them, to the side. It's just all on that panel. And then one challenge from being independent operation is just the installation and removal from the chair. And I know that that's constantly being addressed by manufacturers, but it is a consideration. And then one thing that may be beneficial to individuals is that it does offer an active braking system where you can actually reduce the speed and control how that device both ramps up in speed and ramps down in speed, which is a little different than some of the other devices. So then we will look at Yasmin, who is going to represent our main wheel, Power Assist. Yasmin is a 38-year-old young lady. She's married and a proud pet owner slash parent, as you can see her little guy there in the bottom of the picture. She's a journalist, a podcaster, and an author. And she has a spinal cord injury at the level of C4-5. Due to a diving injury in 1999. And she does have an incomplete presentation, and so she has one side of her body that is stronger than the other. And that kind of leads us into why this type of device was selected, or why she selected this device, is because it could accommodate those differences from her strength. And when she had one arm stronger than the other, it could be programmed to make her have a more symmetrical push. She tried a front power assist device, but due to her level of injury, she could not keep her balance while trying to have both hands on the tiller and having to turn while doing some fine motor tasks. So she didn't have that proximal stability to be able to get some of those more complex distal tasks. She really wanted to preserve her energy throughout the day, as well as protect her shoulders and be more independent. She also felt like when she was in a manual wheelchair that she couldn't propel herself, it was negatively impacting her self-esteem. And so she wanted to have a solution where she could feel a little bit more empowered, a little bit more autonomous. And then as far as her activities, she needed to use this power assist device all day, every day for all of her mobility needs. She not only needed it for indoor household chores, but also taking care of her dog, as well as visiting with family and friends, going out to coffee. And she does feel that when she does go on longer pushes, she is able to get that slight physical activity benefit of increasing her heart rate. That's what she would like to be able to do. So here's a quote from Yasmin, who says that pretty much she was always suffering from pain because of the level of her injury and her incompleteness. She only has a few small ones, meaning small muscles, and so they have to work very hard when she pushes, and she had to be careful how much and when she was able to use those muscles, and she couldn't do very much without experiencing pain. And so as she started to use her power assist device, it allowed all of those tasks to become much more simplified. So you can see Yasmin here navigating into her vehicle with a vehicle lift. And the benefits that she experienced were that it compensated for her strength imbalance, and she did end up, by the time we did this interview, her strength had evened out just a little bit more, and so there was a consistent adjustment of that sensitivity that she needed out of that device. She needed the device that was selected was able to be compatible with an automatic vehicle securement system, so that was a consideration for her. And she was then able to get in and out of her vehicle independently, which she wasn't able to do with other devices. And then she also identified a decreased level of assistance needed from her attendants. Some of the limitations, she had a lot of fear of airline damage, and I think that we know that that's a huge issue in our industry in general, but for the devices where the motor and the battery and all the electronics are in that wheel hub, and someone doesn't know how heavy it is and drops it, it's really challenging to then get back moving in the way that she needed. And if her power assist isn't working, she's now completely dependent. So that was a fear for her and somewhat of a limitation. She did feel, she wasn't comfortable being her own advocate when it came to the fact that this device is safe to fly, safe to travel. There's no restriction. She shouldn't be restricted. So she didn't really feel comfortable bringing the device on trips for both of those reasons. She did report that in the current state, she felt like things were a little bit jumpy, and like if someone was really close to her and happened to go against that hand rim, it would activate for her. And she really, because of her trunk stability, it would kind of throw her balance off if someone else were to bump into it. And then the fact that it added a little bit of width to her chair was challenging because she did live in an older home. And then for her quality of life benefits, she found that it did help to improve her self-esteem, allow her to kind of expand her mobility, her life space mobility, by encouraging her to explore new environments, gave her that little bit of challenge in her physical activity because she could go farther, and then gave her some freedom and independence. So here's a couple of quotes from her. She said that now with the power assist, she doesn't even have to consider being pushed around, as she describes it, or being, pushed by an attendant. And she doesn't have to ever have that feeling again, because that really negatively impacted her. She really felt helpless when she couldn't push herself. And she also said, not only from the physical independence, but also from the psychological aspect. She said she feels a lot of emotional pain when she gets frustrated or she can't be as mobile, and she feels held back by not having this power assist. And so it's really helped her in a wide variety of ways. Specific to main wheel power assist devices and tying it back to that systematic review of the literature, we see that typically it does reduce the number of frequency of pushes required, but it does depend on the environment and the health condition. But the nice thing for Yasmin is what the evidence shows it can accommodate for differences in hand function. There's no compromise for her to be able to carry something because there's nothing in front of her. It does reduce her energy expenditure, but some of the more precision tasks, as well as performing wheelies or navigating curbs, are limited. From a participation standpoint, there's really no impact on how a person can perform their home, work, and school activities. Hopefully it enables them, but definitely will not limit that. But transportation, especially self-transportation, and as we heard, airline transportation may be a problem or may be challenging. Most systems will increase the overall width of a manual wheelchair to some degree, some less than others. And then that sensitivity may take a little bit of time either to get used to or to program and get tuned into that individual. Most of what we saw is that it is somewhat easy to be independent powering these on and off, but challenging to remove. And then there are some solutions that either have a downhill braking system or an uphill kind of hill holding system, which may help aid independent operation. Our last case here, as we proceed to conclude this session, is to meet Michael. He is a military veteran and paramedic. He's married, he travels in an RV, he does scuba diving, and he was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2003. He was 55 at the time that we did his interview. He is experiencing what we would maybe typically see with some presentations of MS, where he's experiencing progressive loss of motor function. He's able to do a little bit of standing and walking, but it really depends, of course, on the day and his levels of fatigue. Especially, he's typically good when it's nice and cool out, or when he knows the terrain, or when it's really short distances. He does have some vision impairment as well. He uses an ultralight folding wheelchair and a rear power assist device. His main goals were to preserve his energy. He didn't want to use it all the time because with MS, he had a lot of fluctuation. Some days he was stronger and didn't need it. Some days he needed it. His wife had a lot of concern about him falling, especially when they were not together, and so it gave her a little bit of reassurance that he would be safe when she wasn't there to assist him in reducing his risk to fall. He did experience fatigue that would limit some of his activities, and he wants to be able to go to the park and run errands with his wife. And he said, just what I said earlier, he uses his legs when he can, but he really is trying to take the advice of his medical team and use his mobility equipment so he doesn't get to the point of overexertion. So he can actually put his device on himself because he is partially ambulatory. And he felt that for him, transporting a power assist device was easier than adapting his vehicles and his home to either a scooter or a small power wheelchair. He did want to have a little bit better navigation on long, steep hills, but overall, he feels like it allowed him to recognize the changes within himself and identify when he needed to use that power assist device, and when he was maybe able to do a little bit more for himself. And of course, ultimately, he was able to alleviate some of the strain on his wife because she wasn't as worried about him falling. And he says that he had a lot of depression when he was starting to change in how well he could walk. And he feels like with the power assist device, he's included again, even though he is losing some of that ability, but he's not left behind. He said his spirits are a lot better and he has the freedom and ability to still do the things he wants. So we know that rear power assist can reduce push frequency. Precision tasks typically aren't as impacted with rear power assist as they are with some of the other power assist solutions. There's minimal impact to advanced wheelchair skills. They can still do wheelies, navigate small curbs, but some of the limitations could be the hand and wrist strength needed to control depending on the type of input device that individual might use. There's really limited impact into transportation. It's definitely easier for individuals, according to the literature, than the front and the main. Really no change to the overall proportions and functional footprint of the manual wheelchair, especially compared to front power assist for the length and main power assist for the width. And then it may be more difficult to start and stop depending on the different types of input devices and depending on how the turns are impacted. And then from independent operation, powering it on and off or taking it on and off may be dependent on someone's functional reach. And there's no active braking. Some devices allow you to slow the motor down, but it doesn't actually brake when you're going down a hill. And it can require some upper body strength and coordination to transport it. Here's just a few additional user quotes that maybe we didn't show you in the specific interviews. As you can see, the lived experience does really match with what the literature shows us, as well as beyond just the typical health and wellness benefits. So hopefully today we've achieved the objectives. You've understood how a systematic review of the literature can be paired with your interview and evaluation to select the correct power assist device for the individual you work with. We've looked beyond repetitive strain and found benefits of energy conservation, making activities faster, easier, and then giving people access to travel farther and experience a wider range of environments and increase their overall independence. There are specific considerations when trying to figure out what device will be beneficial, and we've identified many of those today. And so we will leave that there. We have a full reference list available to you in a white paper, and if you would like to, no pressure, but you can use that QR code to download the white paper. You can reach both Carla and myself through the email research@permobile.com.